Today, we're going to cover a few different things. First, the differences between blockchain ETL and traditional data processing methods. We're also going to cover some of the success stories from industry leaders like Bitcoin.com and Artemis, who've harnessed these new tools to revolutionize their data operations. And then we'll also have a live demo of real-time data synchronization and indexing, showcasing the practical applications of these technologies. And then at the end, we'll have a section for Q&A. So as you start to think of questions, pop them into the Q&A or pop them into the chat. We'll make sure that we have time for them at the end. But there is a Q&A feature built into Zoom that makes this a lot easier. So without further ado, here are today's speakers. I'm Jordan Patapoff, the Senior Director of Ecosystem at QuickNode, where I help lead our startup program and newly formed venture arm. The program I run helps empower startups at all stages with access to free QuickNode credits, engineering support, partner discounts, mentorship, investor introductions, and more. Josh Neuroth is the VP of Product at QuickNode, where he's led the launch of some of our most successful products, some of which we'll cover today. We also have Andreas Larsson, who joins us from Bitcoin.com, where he's the Director of Engineering and helped build out their data ingestion and ETL pipelines. And then last but not least, we have Sebastian Melendez, software engineer from Artemis. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. Blockchain ETL and data pipelines best practices. Josh, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Jordan. Welcome, everyone. Excited that we truly have a global audience. I saw other comments coming in from Eastern Europe, from Bosnia, Brazil. So really global audience today. Let me talk a little bit about why we're doing this this webinar. So, at QuickNode, we're one of the top blockchain providers. We connect builders and developers to blockchain data and also for reading and writing transactions. And so as we've been about 5 years kind of in this business, we've noticed across the board, our customer base struggles with just blockchain data. It's very complex. It's very hard to kind of pull data from these nodes that connect to the blockchain and then make sense of that data. And so we wanted to put together today this webinar with some of our customers and good friends over at Bitcoin.com and Artemis. And so we're excited to do this. Today, we're going to be talking about ETL, an acronym for extracting, transforming, and loading blockchain data. And so in the context of this webinar today, ETL is really about pulling data off the blockchains that are out there somewhere in cyberspace, working together across all the nodes, and then doing something with that data. So I want to introduce first Andreas at Bitcoin.com. Andreas, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into crypto, into Web3, and what you guys do over at Bitcoin.com?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, our main product is basically our non-custodial wallet app, and that's kind of the entry point for all our users. We support a bunch of different currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, AVAX, and some other cryptos, right? And I guess the most important thing for a wallet is obviously to display a user's money, their balance, right? So that's obviously something that's very different in the blockchain space compared to like a traditional database where you just have a number in a database and that's your balance. And blockchain doesn't really work like that, right? When users interact with the chain, we need to make sure we provide real-time updates for all these balances and everything the user is doing, right? So we kind of started out just pulling data from nodes, right? That's where we started with our indexing, basically our main indexing, just pulling data from nodes and putting that in the caches of databases, right? Obviously, that has a lot of issues. It's pretty difficult to start with, and obviously it doesn't really scale when you need to want to add a new chain. They're all a little bit different, even though you kind of think they're the same and they feel the same, they're all a little different, right? So that's kind of where we took this process, is like starting from just nodes, doubling up for hosting our own nodes, to then going through and using QuickNode as our node provider, and now kind of looking into switching to the new streaming product, which kind of it is supposedly to fix most of these issues for us, right? So that's very helpful for us in normal development, right?
Awesome. And you brought up a great point. I love how you described kind of your evolution really in this space. Is you guys started with maybe running your own nodes, and then working with QuickNode to connect to our nodes that we're running, and now you're using our new product called Streams that you're effectively using it to pull data off the chain through our streaming product. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges of why did your journey go like that? Why isn't it just sufficient to use kind of the open source node clients that are out there? I think you highlighted a few points, but can you go a little bit more into detail in the challenges that you guys face there?
For sure. I mean, the first thing about nodes is that they're hard to run for a start, right? Just like to start a node and actually run nodes at scale, it is a difficult problem. And it's also expensive. I mean, it costs money. You need certain archive nodes. You need nodes for every different blockchain. That just creates like an infrastructure challenge, right? That's hard on its own. But then obviously just to reading the data, they're kind of, I guess they're simple. There's WebSockets. You pull data from your WebSockets. When you see a transaction, you might need more information. So you might need to do a get transaction or debug trace transaction or something like that to get all the information you need to actually figure out if someone actually sent inside a contract with internal transactions, for example, right? So that whole process is obviously pretty difficult, time consuming, and kind of just causes a bunch of issues, obviously, with data inconsistency and other things, right?
Right, right. And it causes you to have to deal with those issues versus focusing on your product roadmap, building new features, supporting new chains, all of that, which stalls development. Let me go to Sebastian over at Artemis Analytics next. Sebastian, you guys are a relatively new startup and you're quickly scaling. I know this year has been really bonkers for your growth. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey at Artemis and what you guys are working on?
Yeah, so Artemis is a fundamental data analytics provider. At the end of the day, we want to provide kind of clean, accurate, and fresh data to all our customers where they can make insights about kind of what's really happening on chain. And so that's kind of our main priority is right, giving clarity to users and what people are using these different dApps for.
Gotcha. So you guys are effectively taking blockchain data from, the nodes. Maybe you could call it raw data, and you're doing something with that data. Can you talk a little bit about like what that looks like? Are you enriching the data? And then who are your who's your primary user group?
Yep, exactly. So like when we started out, it was pulling from either some bespoke APIs or maybe graph endpoints. But that doesn't really allow us to go deeper and really answer those questions of what's happening in crypto. And so we realized we need access to this raw data. And so that can look like kind of what Andreas was saying, right, with the infrastructure problem of pulling from our node ourselves or running our own node. And that's like pretty inefficient and pretty difficult to manage over time. And so products like Streams have really made this easier, where we can just pipe all of this data kind of into our system, and then we can do what we want and transform it, and ultimately give the insights that we want.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think this is a good point. We're going to see a demo in a little bit of kind of the Streams product, but this is exactly why QuickNode created Streams, is because we saw this need, especially as we've kind of gone to this massive amount of chains that are out there in the space today. We've seen an explosion this year of chains, data. Every time there's a new chain, it increases the amount of data. We're seeing more wallets being created. We're seeing just transactions. I remember when I started in this space almost 5 years ago, our developers were just building apps that needed to do 20 requests per second, and now we see the tens of thousands of requests per second in requirements from customers, which speaks to the maturity of where the whole space is going. I think that you guys brought up some good points here, and you're using kind of blockchain data in very different use cases. And so we have Bitcoin.com functioning as a wallet provider that maybe as a user, I'm setting up a non-custodial wallet and I want to see all the transactions I've ever done on the different chains that that are supported. And then with Artemis, Artemis is creating these insights for traders, for crypto investors on what's happening on chain. Maybe let's go back to Bitcoin.com. As you guys have what are some features that you've used this data to support? Can users see their historical balances? Like, I know you guys run a DEX as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think absolutely. The main point is, as a user, you come into a wallet either if you're imported. So if you import a key from somewhere else, you kind of want to see everything you have ever done. Like that. That's kind of a base level like criteria now. It didn't really used to be like this when I started. You were kind of okay as long as your balance show up, but that's definitely not the case, right? You want to see which contract you interacted with when you send approvals, like doing all these things, and it really needs to be real time. Like before, it was kind of okay if it was a little slow, but definitely like talking about DEX is like when you're interacting with DEXs with approval transactions, nonces, so like things like that really needs to be up to date because you're sending like quick consequential transactions that needs to like compare them, and then you can go to the next one, right? So that is kind of I guess, a new problem that came up for us, definitely, where we like what we had wasn't, I guess, real time enough. So you would you send your approval and you're like, oh, I got stuck or it didn't update properly, and then you get frustrated, right? And definitely we have a lot of new users that have never used crypto before, and obviously for them they'd be super confused, right? So that's why this kind of is growing. Like this real time data focus is definitely a growing need for, I think, not just us but most people in this space, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think one of the issues that we see customers and users struggling with is block reorganizations. When I first started working in the space, I didn't really know about this, but it seems like the problem has gotten worse. Can you talk a little bit about, like what are block reorgs and how they would affect you?
Like a reorg, it happens a lot, right? And there's basically an orphan block. There's competing miners and things like that, right? So you end up with kind of a two pieces of the same chain, right? And obviously after you actually get a block and you kind of know like, oh, I don't have the previous block to this block. And it's like, oh, this is a reorg. And now you kind of have to deal with transactions and things that the user just did potentially getting undone, right? And that is something that's totally new for crypto. It used to be, I used to be doing indexers for BTC back in the day, and it was basically the same issue, but it handles a little bit easier because there's 10 minutes blocks. But now on EVM chains and all these layer 2s and 3s, blocks just flow so quickly. So this reorg problem really is getting worse.
Yeah, and the way I would describe that to the audience, like a good analogy for what we're talking about, I always think about kind of like liquid water turning to ice. As the blockchain is forming, like what is the state of the chain or what is final? It's almost kind of like that process of water turning into ice. And so you have parts of the water that might be frozen, other parts aren't. And that's kind of what you have to deal with as an engineer, as a developer, when you're pulling real-time data on chain, is what is truly final. And sometimes that can change, second by second, and so as a user, if I'm doing a transaction, I submitted, a high value transaction, I'm wondering what's going on with that. I'm refreshing my wallet like over and over in the Android or iOS app. That can be could take some time to really understand like when that transaction is final. And so that's what we're talking about today, is like we've built this product for streams called Streams that really makes it easy, and you don't no longer have to deal with those block reorgs with the streaming product. QuickNode kind of handles all of that with our sensors and all of the nodes that we're running. Would love to kind of go back to Artemis with Sebastian. You guys see any challenges with reorgs with the work that you're doing and kind of getting that real-time data, or is it more like historical things that you're looking at?
I think we kind of we face the reorg problem as well as issues with historical data, right? With reorgs, we pump the data into our system, and sometimes we try not to make an assumption that the state is finalized unless it's been a few days even. Right? With reorgs, it can take some time depending on the chain, and so it's important for us that our system is set up and handles reorgs and selects kind of like, essentially we select the max extraction date as blocks enter our system. And so that allows us to kind of quickly and efficiently handle reorgs. But for like historical data, one of the biggest problems we face right now is our data sets are growing in size, right? With these with these blockchains kind of not ever pruning state, and we need full historical data, as well as going deeper into this data, our data sets are growing to terabytes. And so how do we actually end up processing this, right? For us, it looks like we try to do incremental runs, and we try to only refresh new data that has entered the system rather than refreshing historically all the time. And so specifically for this, right, like our stablecoin work is big in this. The deeper insights we go, or the deeper we go into this data, we want to be able to provide it on like an address basis. And so to be able to do that, we ultimately have to figure out a way to handle, right, rather than aggregating them in a day, but figure out how to handle like efficient compute of a lot of these different metrics.
Yeah, and you guys are enriching the data too. So you're taking your other data that you have, like for example, labeling, like labeling contracts and associating a contract with an organization. You're having to then kind of mix that data and attach it to the on-chain data, which adds even more complexity. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do in terms of like enriching the data for your users?
That's so for us, we manage all of our tagging in-house. And so what that looks like is either manually tagged contracts, right? A contract address is only useful for how much you know about it. Right? Maybe it's a number in a table, but can you really tell what app it is? And so for us, that's kind of where we spike is we give you insights into what apps are actually being used. And that requires us to manage like a constantly updating database of tags and really be able to join that on these raw transactions and exhaust data on chain.
Awesome. Okay. So we kind of previously mentioned just the explosion of chains. I know with the L2s, we brought up these layer 2 blockchains several times in this conversation, how they're getting faster and faster as scalability has improved, but that just means data is harder to fetch real time. Maybe Andreas, can you tell us, you guys support a handful of chains today in your wallet. What's stopping you? Do you have anything on what's stopping you from adding more chains? Do you have any on the roadmap you'd share with kind of the audience today?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like we support 5 or 6 right now. And obviously like that, the main issue is data, right? Like, can we give the users a reliable balance and historical data over every new chain that comes up, right? Because we could just throw it in there, right? And just load the data from the node, and yeah, it would work, right? But we're really looking forward to this like snappy experience, right, where the user doesn't have to do anything. We also want to integrate with things like push notifications, right? So you can't really rely on just like opening the app and then reload the balance on demand, right? We want to in the background kind of know what the user is doing, right, when they're not using our app, so we can tell them like, hey, you just received money, or hey, something new happened, right? So yeah, it's obviously hard to scale it into new chains because they're all a little bit different. And obviously that's kind of where we're looking into these kind of products, right? Where we can have like one style of ETL pipeline for all the chains, right? Where we don't need a AVAX integration or a Polygon integration. It's kind of just the same structure, and then it's just about which node or which layer 2 or L3 or whichever chain it's coming from, and we can use kind of the same pipeline for everything. So that's really powerful for us, right? Where we don't have to just build everything every time, like build a new thing for a new chain, which obviously takes a lot of development time that we'd rather spend on making our product better, right?
Right. And that's a great point, is that every blockchain effectively has slightly different standards and methods that are available to call from its node client. So it adds complexity every chain that you bring in. Sebastian, what are you guys excited about this year? What's on your roadmap? Are you guys considering adding more chains? And I know there's been a big movement in the space. We've seen this, our customers like going from only using a handful of chains to like asking us for, frankly, dozens, if not hundreds of chains these days. And so, how do you see that in relation to data analytics and what you guys are working on?
I think honestly, every day we have a new customer coming in being like, hey, can you add IMX? Can you add Stellar? And so for us, it's that same problem that Andreas faces. It's, can we get access to reliable and accurate data? To figure out where we can, right? We don't like to pull from black box APIs. It's pretty Like we want people to trust our data and trust the relationships that we're building and trust the transformations that we're making on this data. And so, right, products like Streams make that a lot easier. It gives us a shorter time to integrate a chain because you guys can handle most of the indexing and the backfilling, and then we have to handle the obviously transformations and parsing.
Right. Great. Just couldn't have said it better. All right. I think with that, we should turn it over to Gayle, who's going to be running us through a demo of Streams, and we can see kind of the product that, by the way, this is available like for all QuickNode users. You can go sign up for an account for QuickNode, and with our new plans, there's some included usage for this product. So go ahead and do that if you're on the call, or follow along in the demo.
Hi, you may have heard Andreas and Sebastian mentioning Streams, our streaming data solution. My name's Gayle, and I'm on the QuickNode product team. I help develop Streams and Functions, our new Web3 optimized serverless compute product. Now I want to show you guys a demo to see these products in action. Welcome to this demo of QuickNode Streams and Functions. Today I'll show you how these powerful tools can revolutionize your blockchain data processing. Whether you're building an app, conducting research, or monitoring on-chain activity, Streams and Functions offer a streamlined, efficient solution for real-time data handling. Let's start with Streams. Streams allows you to tap into blockchain data in real time. Instead of constantly pulling an RPC endpoint, Streams push relevant data to you as it happens. You can easily configure Streams to filter for specific data, events, or transactions. In this case, we're going to filter base mainnet for ERC20, 721, and 1155 token transfers, extracting key data points that we will send over to our function for processing afterward. This targeted approach significantly reduces data volume and processing overhead, enabling you to only stream the data you need. Now let's look at Functions. Functions acts as your serverless compute layer, enabling you to process, enrich, and transform your blockchain data without managing any infrastructure. You can write custom logic to handle your data, integrate with external APIs, and even trigger actions based on specific blockchain events. In this case, we're using our RPC endpoint to make ETH call requests and using Axios to make HTTP requests to retrieve token metadata. Functions offers built-in support for many useful packages and Web3 libraries. Functions scale automatically with your workload, ensuring optimal performance at all times. So now that we have created our function and set up our stream with filter, we're going to connect our stream to our function so that as data passes through the stream, it's passed directly into the function. Let's take a look. And here we go. We got our first payload. We can see the ERC20 tokens that have been sent to our webhook. We have the data that was passed from the stream, and then we also have the data that our function grabbed from the network, like the token name, the symbol, the decimals, and then we process the data to create this formatted payload here that takes the decimals into account. There's quite a few ERC20 transfers in this particular payload, but if we scroll down a little bit further, we can find some ERC 721 NFTs. And then here's one where our function actually was able to pull the metadata for the NFT token. And all of this is happening in real time as those payloads are being processed from the stream. With Streams and Functions, you're getting a powerful, scalable, and cost-effective solution for blockchain data processing, real-time custom processing, and seamless integration, all without the headache of infrastructure management. This customizable, easy-to-set-up system not only saves time, but can significantly reduce costs. This is the future of blockchain data handling.
All right.
Awesome. Gayle, that was an incredible demo. Just kind of showing us how Streams works in conjunction with Functions. And for receiving the webhook, I usually use ngrok, but I think I saw you using webhook.site. So that's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever used that tool before. I'll definitely have to check that one out as well. But we've been sent a few questions. I got some via DMs, but keep in mind, we are using the Q&A function. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and pop them in. But a few people did DM me some questions, so I'll go ahead and start with those. This first one It looks like it's specific to streams and specific to the demo. So Gayle, I think this might be for you. This one's coming from a Carl in Rome. Must be late in Italy right now, so appreciate you tuning in. The question is, what happens when there is a block reorg, and how do you identify it and get the new data?
So thanks for that question. Reorg handling is a setting within streams. And if you enable that, we will restream you the new data if a reorg occurs on chain. So, if you turn on the reorg handling and we stream you blocks 1, 2, and 3, and then there's a reorg on block 2, then we'll send you block 2 and 3 again. So you will get all of the data even when reorgs occur.
Got it. And then we had another question, I think specific here to streams. Can the QuickNode tools you demoed be used in conjunction with my current data lakes and data warehouse?
So the answer to that question is yes. We do have a direct integration from Streams to Snowflake. We are working on some additional, we have S3 also, but we're also working on some additional destinations. But when you use functions as a destination for your stream, you can actually connect that to any data lake or data storage warehouse that you have directly through functions, even if we don't have the direct integration on Streams itself.
Got it. Then we have, let's see, another one. I'll go in the chat, but if you do have questions, try to pop them in the Q&A. It's a little bit easier to manage than scrolling through the chat, but I'll go ahead and do both right now. This is from Kyler. The question is, does this support CSV and or Parquet for export as well? Gayle, maybe I'll give that to you or Josh.
What was the first one?
Does this support CSV and or Parquet for export?
Currently, no, but Parquet format is something that we have on our roadmap. And you should be able to process data through functions and generate a CSV if that is something that you wish to have the data exported as.
Cool. Yep, makes sense. And then this one's from Ram. And maybe I'll give this to you, Josh. Is real-time data analysis possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're streaming the data as soon as it's available on the nodes. And so, if keep in mind, it is raw data, like it's up to you to like what Artemis is doing to create insights on that data. But yes, that real-time raw transactions as they form in those blocks is streamed to you. And so you could take that data, put it in a data warehouse, surface it in charts and graphs on a website, whatever you want to do with it. Or you could even like build maybe a trading bot or something based on that data as well.
Very cool. Yeah. Let's see. Next one here, Diego. Is there a limit of processing on functions regarding transformations that can be done? Any additional costs involved? Gayle, maybe I'll give this one over to you.
Sure. So when you set up your function, you can define, what your timeout is, like the maximum time that your function can run. And so that would be the limit on that particular function in terms of how long it could run. But there's no limit specifically to the number of transformations that you can do. The costs, it's based on your compute usage. It's a really simple calculation. We can post a link to how that charge is determined, but we also include some functions usage in all the rate plans as well. So it's extremely flexible, no limits on how much transformation you can do. It just depends on how you configure your function and how much memory it's allocated to it.
Got it. Appreciate that, Gayle. And then this one, it seems to be more of a broader question. So Andreas, maybe I'll go ahead and give this one to you. The question is, can you explain the loading process in blockchain ETL and how it ensures data integrity, or maybe how you ensure data integrity?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for us, the data integrity is like a little bit depending on the nodes, right? So the first off is like all the things we've talked about, reorgs and everything. If you figure all of that out, for us, it's then about parsing transactions to actually figure out what if this transaction had anything to do with any of our users, and if it did, we save it in our database, right? So that's kind of our process. It's like we get a bunch of data, we basically look at every transaction on the entire chain, on all chains, that we support and see if any of these transactions are related to any of our users, basically addresses. You just match up a bunch of addresses, right? And then we update our table that says like, yes, balance updated, right? And that's kind of a manual process. And I guess this is one of the things we're trying to kind of get away from by using this instead. Is like, instead of doing all this processing on our side, we want to kind of offload a little bit of that to the filters and everything that we already talked about here.
Got it. Yeah, appreciate the insight there. That was great. Another one that I think is pretty broad, and maybe Sebastian would love to hear your insight on this one. The question is, what are some of the challenges in achieving cross-chain interoperability using blockchain ETL, and maybe some of the challenges that you've come across? Curious to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, for us, right, we support like 30 different chains. And so they all have, a lot of them outside of like the EVM have their own schema. And even some that are EVM compatible have their own schema, especially when we ingest the raw data. And so for us, it's about kind of taking those schemas and kind of standardizing them kind of in our system. And so we use tools like dbt to help us make all these transformations and ultimately get it into a standardized format. So anything downstream of, I guess what you can say is like our pre-processed data, we can just like efficiently pipe through all of our pipeline.
Got it. Yeah, really great insight there. Reminder to everyone tuned in, go ahead and pop your question into the Q&A. We still have quite a few questions we're working through, but go ahead and get yours in the queue. I really like this next question, and maybe I'll go through, to each of the panelists and get your input. But more of an abstract question. So how would you go about establishing an ETL pipeline that needs both Web3 and Web2 data? For example, enriching my Web3 data with the price of gold at any given time. Maybe Josh, I'll start with you and would love to hear everyone else's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you could, that's literally what Artemis does. We at QuickNode, we don't enrich the data. So you could take that raw blockchain data, put it in your data warehouse, S3 bucket, Kafka, ClickHouse, some of these other tools that are available, and then you'd have to do some work. You could also use our functions product to kind of connect another API into that. But yeah, we just provide the raw data. I think maybe that's a question for Sebastian, without giving too much of your secret sauce away. Like, how do you guys think about that and kind of enriching that data from the raw data to like enriched data?
Yeah, so going back to kind of what I said earlier, once we get it in a standardized format, it's a lot easier for us to join and enrich this data, right? Join it on our tags. But really, we want to do everything in a single system, right? We don't want to be pumping it in and out of Snowflake or into Python. And so we really just try to push everything into Snowflake and use SQL and kind of dbt to really help us manage a lot of these, like joining the data and making it more useful to people.
Got it. Super helpful. And Andreas or Gayle, I don't know if there's anything else you'd want to throw in there.
Yeah, I think you kind of echo the things. Like we just basically enrich a lot of our transactions with fiat currencies, right? Which is mostly what the users care about. So we have a bunch of market data on one side that we pull from a bunch of fiat providers, and then we had a bunch of crypto data from the other side, right? And then kind of the classic thing is like join this together with just SQL or any other tools out there, really.
Perfect. And then Gayle, anything else?
So the only thing that I can add to this is that streams, filters, and functions both have access to key value store, which is another QuickNode product, and it enables you to store data to access within your functions and within your stream filters. So it is possible, if you wanted to, you could connect to an external Oracle within a function, or you could store some data within the key value store and evaluate against it as you're streaming data or processing those blocks if you choose.
Got it. Yeah, love that call out to key value store and store. So this next one seems more specific to streams, and I think it's partially been answered, but kind of worth revisiting again. So maybe we could break this into two parts, because I think, Gayle, you already answered the latter part of this. Can I export all transfers, and this is all moves of tokens, various events, internal transactions of ERC20, ERC721, and more to Parquet/CSV? I believe you'd mentioned, Parquet and CSV are coming, but maybe you could speak to the first part of that question, Gayle, that's in the chat. So exporting of, tokens, events, internal transactions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the demo that we showed earlier had a demonstration of transferring out the ERC 2721 and 1155 tokens through the streams filter. That can be extended to include, any conditions or types of transactions that you wish to target, and you can return any of the streaming data that you wish from the stream based on those conditions. So that is certainly possible. In terms of the format, we don't currently have Parquet or CSV as a direct export format from streams. However, you can connect to functions and manipulate that data into additional formats if you choose before sending it to your final destination.
I love that. Yeah. And so you could do it now with functions, or, potentially later as we kind of keep iterating on this product, it may be available natively. And I would imagine what they're trying to do is, one of my favorite design patterns is, Amazon S3 with Athena. So, querying your data that's stored in Parquet or CSV. So really love that design pattern. Cool. This next one comes from Kyler Klontz. Really great question. I love this one. Any plans to support a binary to run or ABI support on functions? Example, if I wanted to use Blazing MQ to ingest, but our clients are written in Go or C++, would need to build an uploaded binary to run. Gayle or Josh, maybe you could take that one.
I can take that one. So on functions, we currently support the Node.js and the Python runtimes. And you can upload binaries, or you can code it in the code editor. But we do plan to expand to additional languages, including Go, which would then support uploading a Go binary and running it in your function.
Cool, got it. Awesome. So now that was kind of the Q&A that we had in the chat. Again, if you do have any questions, pop it into the Q&A feature in Zoom. Starting to work through that. This is a question for Artemis. Pretty high level, but maybe there's more color you can add here. How do you handle the transformations in your ETL pipelines right now?
Most of our we use kind of a tool called DBT. I think it stands for Data Build Tool, which handles a lot of the abstracts kind of the DML and DDL language and allows us to just write pure SQL, which is really nice.
Cool. Appreciate that color there. I'll definitely have to check out DBT. I haven't spent too much time with that tool, but sounds interesting. This one comes from Alex. He says, "Hi, what do you use for streaming? Has there been any experience with Kafka or Flint or ClickHouse? It would be interesting to hear feedback on those technologies." Of course, we've been talking about streams today, pushing streaming data. But maybe, the question is more around do we support Kafka and ClickHouse as destinations? So Gayle or Josh, if you want to add some color there.
Currently, we don't have those direct integrations for Kafka and ClickHouse, but they can be supported via functions. And we do have additional destinations on our roadmap for streams.
Perfect. Josh, anything you'd like to add there?
No, that's always great feedback. We do have a feature request little form in the product. You can always request features here, but we're definitely considering those for the roadmap.
Love it. Love it. Cool. This next one comes from Wada. Apologies if I mispronounced your name. The question is, how do you, Artemis, manage the configurations and onboarding of retailers? I'm guessing it's a manual process. How do you make it scale to onboard with minimal human intervention? Sebastian, of course, feel free answering, whatever you're comfortable there, but if there's any color you can provide.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two sides to this. The first is maybe our crypto investors or institutional clients. Right now, you can access most of our data on our terminal if you go to app.artemis.xyz. But for more for people who want deeper insights and access our Snowflake, that's kind of more of a manual process. And then on the other side of that, it's how do we onboard chains, right? Sometimes foundations and chains come to us. And so that's honestly a pretty manual process. It's working with them, seeing what they need, and really understanding what they want to show. And yeah, I guess really just showing understanding their needs is kind of how we try to do it.
Got it. And it looks like Wada had just clarified. I don't think he meant retailers. They meant chains. But yeah, so I guess how do you manage the configuration of onboarding chains?
Yeah, I think for the first part is getting access to the data. So we got to figure out where we can find it, and then from there, it's a pretty manual process to standardize it. And then once it's standardized, once we can get the data in kind of a standardized format, it pipes to our system pretty easily and reliably every day. Nice.
All right, and then looks like we have our final question in from Diego. So this is your last chance to get your question in the Q&A. On the business plan, you mentioned on the plans section, S3 compatible storage, Snowflake, Postgres. What does that mean? And what is counted as a request per second in regards of a stream? Gayle, maybe you could take that one.
Sure, certainly. So what we mean by the S3 compatible storage, Snowflake, PostgreSQL, those are native destinations for streams. So those are places where you can send data directly within the stream's configuration settings to any of those platforms. What's counted as a request per second with regard to a stream, it depends on the data set that you choose. If you choose like a single data set like block, then you're going to have one, each one of those blocks is going to be one request. But if you choose like blocks with receipts, that counts as 2 requests because it has 2 composite parts. And if you choose, block with receipts and debug trace, then you have 3 requests for that particular block because it is a composite data set.
Got it. Super helpful and appreciate that color. Well, that concludes our Q&A, but it doesn't end here, right? If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us, QuickNode, contact us. We have a ton of different ways on X or any other social platform. And then we also are going to send out some resources after today's event. So you'll be able to access the demo that Gayle put together with functions and streams. It'll walk you through step by step how to get started and how to do exactly what she was doing in only a few clicks. We also have some more information on streams. If you check it out, quicknode.com/streams. We have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@QuickNode. Check us out, like and subscribe. And then we're also providing a functions library of templates for the functions product that we were talking about today. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Gayle. Thank you, Josh. This was fantastic. I learned a lot. I'm excited to go try out your demo, Gayle. That was super cool. And stay in touch. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to help. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.